You there? Al? It's me. It's Mike. It's day 352. 7:40 p.m. I'm still here. If you're out there, say something. Or give me a sign. I won't even say anything. Just, I want to know if you're okay. Hello, is that you?
And welcome back to the Ham Radio podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ashley. And as always, I have this very special episode in story for you guys. Today, we're going to be recapping Stranger Things Day 2022. And it wasn't quite as jam-packed as last year's, but we did get some really good ST5 news and some other, season 4 behind-the-scenes pics and some newer stuff. And for those who were fortunate enough to be able to go watch Volume 2 in the theaters, I did not want to make the drive to Atlanta to do that, but for all those who did, I heard they had a really awesome time, and it was super fun watching it on the big screen. I admit I'm jealous of that. But before we get into Stranger Things Day, I do have like a very, very special announcement that I've been waiting like a month or so to make official here on the podcast for everyone. And that is, we have a co-host now. Yay! And she is no stranger to the podcast. Talking about Jasmin Pettie, who has been on the podcast with us a couple times in the past. She was on here for our pre-Stranger Things 4 predictions, theories, and then she came on after season 4 came out to talk a little bit about it. But now she's part of the Ham Radio family now. So we're so glad to have Jasmin join the family, and I'm going to let her take it over for a little bit and just tell you guys a little bit about herself and why she decided to join us as co-host. Jasmin?
Hi everyone, so super happy to be here and to be making it official. So yeah, as if you listen to the couple episodes I was on before, I was previously a co-host on Dance It Out, a Grey's Anatomy podcast, and while I'm still a big Grey's Anatomy fan, I decided to kind of step away and stay on as a producer because I'm not really digging the current season, and if you do watch that show, you'll know what I mean. So when Ashley did the call out for a new co-host, I decided to put my my hat into the ring because I really enjoyed being on the podcast before, and always loved talking about Stranger Things, and I'm part of a big Tumblr and Discord community where there's always, season 5 theories going around, and I always find super interesting. So I was super excited when Ashley asked me to join the podcast and to become permanently a part of the Ham Radio family. Super excited to be here and to talk about Stranger Things Day.
Awesome. And again, we're so glad, Jasmin, that you have joined the family. I don't really, call it team because, it's more like family, but, team, family, it's all the same. And also because it's, just me. So, anytime we get additional folks involved, it's always a good day. But so we actually got an email. Well, when I put the announcement out on Twitter about a month ago, and the emailer was congratulating for the new co-host, but I thought at first he was a little bit confused. I guess he thought I was leaving the show and it was like a replacement thing. And I was like, no, we're just, getting like, permanent co-host to help, with the show and stuff. And because there are things that I plan to do, in the future in the podcast, and I'm like, I'm really gonna need a co-host to, help with all that stuff, and also because, sometimes having another person on your show does help to give a little bit, oomph, if you will, because there's only so much you can talk to yourself about.
About, yeah.
Yeah.
Or talk to
And
yourself so much. Yeah.
yeah. And also, for everyone listening, like Jasmine has a lot that she wants to talk about when we get rocking and rolling, all that good stuff. So, your guys gonna be hearing a lot of theories and stuff and all the Stans or, Jancy's, whoever you are, if that's who you are and you love the relationship side of things, well, Jasmine, that's what, Jasmine loves to talk about that. So it's gonna be all good. It's probably be maybe our only episode before the end of 2022, together, but 2023, Jasmine and I are gonna be, hitting up the sound waves on the ham radio together. And so I'm really, really excited about that. We're going to be doing like a Patreon, and we're going to get out there on TikTok, all that good stuff, which Jasmine so kindly has agreed to do that because I don't really know how to use TikTok. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how to use TikTok. So it's just going good. We're going to go off into the sunset of Stranger Things 5 together.
Yes.
Jasmine, you ready to get into Stranger Things 5? I mean, Stranger Things Day. I got it on the brain. I've got it on the brain. So, Jasmine, just what were your thoughts on Stranger Things Day this year?
I really liked it. Like we were saying earlier, before we started recording, that it was a little bit slower pace than last year's, which was nice. And I was saying, I watched Stranger Things for the first time during the pandemic. So to be honest, I don't even remember. Like, I know obviously Stranger Things Day happens every year, but I think I might have seen some stuff last year, but I don't even remember if I'd watched the whole show at that point. Do you know what I mean? The pandemic is such a blur that, you have trouble kind of keeping track of things. Yeah, this was the first one I really tuned in for, so that was really cool. And like we talked about previously, I hadn't seen the show yet, for previous rounds of like marketing or being able to watch it live. So as a communications person, I really love seeing all those kinds of things, as a fan, but also somebody who works professionally in that area. I always find this stuff really interesting in how people choose to market something, when something's done well, when it's done badly, the different choices people make. I really love that. So I really enjoyed it. It was nice to kind of have something slower pace, like you said. And I really loved the behind the scenes. I loved I was following the tags for all like the art and GIF and tweets, things that people were creating for it, which was really cool. It's cool to see a lot of the fandom stuff that gets created. So I really loved that. And it got me like super hyped for season 5. I was already hyped. But yeah, and I think it's good. I mean, I think we're all going to be really sad when the show ends, but I also really respect the fact that, they're not dragging it out. Like, they've had a set plan the whole time. Things have obviously been adjusted, actors brought a different performance, that kind of thing, which I think is great. But they've had a set ending and they're not going to go past that. Like, they might do spin-offs, but they're not going to go past that. And I respect that. I've watched a lot of shows with, they get to like season 10 of something, and after that it takes a nosedive. And obviously, Stranger Things was never going to go 10 seasons, but you know what I mean? Like, there's that point where it's like the original premise kind of runs out and they push it past it. And I appreciate that they're like, no, this is the set goal. This is where we're going, with adjustments along the way. And we're not going to stretch out past that. We'll do spin-offs. We'll do other things where this story is contained. And I really respect that. And I like the fact that it opens it up in the future for, if they wanted to not do a reboot, but, come back years later with the kids of, the main characters. You know what I mean? Like, it gives that avenue while preserving the original story. And I think that's the best way to do it. I don't think there's a better way,
Oh yeah, totally. Like, I actually love that they know that they want it to end with 5 seasons. They know how they want season 5 to end. And sometimes less is better,
Yes.
I've like you, I've watched some shows that, had like 10 plus seasons, and you could definitely tell that, the actors and the showrunners and the writers, kind of lost a little bit of interest in it. The storylines were just like all over the place, and it was just, you could tell it just lost its spunk. And that's one thing I would never want for Stranger Things, is for it to become that. And I think that the actors on Stranger Things, as much as they love playing on the show, I really think they would love to do other things. And I think, they'll be able to do that obviously after season 5 ends. But yeah, I mean, the way they have the show the trajectory they have it on now, I really don't see how you could really get another season out of it, much less like 5 more, you know? So, yeah, as much as it pains me as a fan to know that after season 5, the main Stranger Things will not be making new seasons, at least we do have spin-offs now. We don't really know what those are yet, but I mean, I'll still watch them. I mean, I'm not crazy. I'm still going to watch those, but yeah, it's definitely going to be bittersweet watching the final episode of season 5.
Yeah,
So
it definitely will be bittersweet. I think it's something I'm probably going to rewatch for years to come, though.
yeah,
Definitely. Or I know a lot of people have that Halloween tradition. They watch season 2 every Halloween, so I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, I agree. Like, I think with the way, I think maybe in an earlier season I could have seen where they could have kept stretching it, but I think with the way they set up, season 4 was so much of a setup season, for season 5,
yeah.
that I don't see how they could go past that. And also I feel like that drags it into the 90s, and while that's, you know what I mean, like, it's not so much what the show is that nostalgia for the 80s. And you could do a nostalgia 90s show, of course, but I feel like that's kind of getting away from the aesthetic that the Duffer Brothers have really said that they love and they've committed to. The closer you get into the 90s. So yeah, I agree. I think with the setup they've done, one more season makes sense. And I also feel like that gives them enough time to, defeat the big bad, bring everything to a conclusion,
Yeah.
figure out work out the relationship stuff, who winds up with who. We get to see where they wind up, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and speaking like to the point of the setup, that's why sometimes it really grates on my nerves when you go on the internet and you see the fans who really don't like their big reveal that Vecna is the Mind Flayer and all that, because to them the Mind Flayer is the baddie, and he could be, I don't know, but I'm like, if they don't do it the way that they are with Vecna, Henry Creel, all that, they're not going to be able to end the show, because if they just have it on the Mind Flayer and just introduce new monster season, then you'll have like 10 seasons of the show. They'll never be able to stick the landing of the ending. So that's why I appreciate them for doing it the way they've done it. Now, I will say that it's probably one of the downsides of choosing to have those kind of reveals towards the end of your show, because there's like nothing at the beginning that ever pointed to this guy. But
I actually disagree with you on that, because have you seen the whole Flickergate thing online? Have you seen this?
I have not.
Okay, all right, we gotta get into this. So, Flickergate is basically people talking about how. So the theory in season 1, and they do, is that blood draws the monster, right? Which we now know to be a Demogorgon, right? And they really they zoom in on the blood in the pool, and the theory is, okay, it's that's what draws the monster, that's what got Barb killed, right? But people have pointed out a few things since Vecna was revealed to be the mastermind, which is that, so 2 things. So one, when Will, Lucas, and Dustin bike home from Mike, as they leave, the light flickers over the garage, and Mike kind of looks up at it. At the time, it just kind of looks like, oh, the light's malfunctioning or whatever. But since we now know that Vecna and things with upside down affect the light, people have pointed out that if you watch, the light actually flickers and then follows them down the street. Like, the thing didn't start tracking him until we originally think, oh, it started tracking him later, like after he departs the rest of the group. Will leaves the rest of the group, the Demogorgon is chasing him, right? But people have pointed out, if you actually go back and watch that scene, the light starts at the Wheeler's garage and follows him. So the theory being that, like, that's like it latched onto him there. And so there's that. And the second thing is, which I find extremely compelling, is that when Will runs into his house and tries to use the phone, he locks the door behind them, does the deadbolt, everything. People have compared that to the scene where Eleven shows up in season 2 and how the deadbolt moves without anybody touching it. And like, at the time, none of us thought about this because we didn't, we were so early on the show, they hadn't really established what Demogorgon, what the monster was or what it could do, and no one really questioned it. But people have brought up the fact that basically, like, the deadbolt moves without anybody touching it. That's telekinesis. Demogorgons, as far as we know, have no telekinetic ability. They're monsters, they come through walls, that's their entire deal. And so people are like, was that actually Vecna? Like, was Vecna the monster? Because people are like, well, if you look at the outline of the monster, it could be a Demogorgon. It could also be Vecna. We see it so briefly. So the theory being that my personal theory on this one is that Vecna was pulling the strings, but Brenner and Owen say Henry's gotten stronger over time to absorb people's ability as he kills them. Then my theory is, okay, Vecna went after Will, right? But he didn't have the strength to break through or to actually get to him. So he sent the Demogorgon out kind of as his soldier into the real world.
Mhm.
Once Al opened the gate, and that the Demogorgons, like the Demagogues, like the Mind Flayer, were all working for him. And that he was behind, but he was behind all the time. And this difference with season 4 is he finally gains enough strength over time from all these people he's killed, and the Mind Flayer and absorbing all his powers to be able to break through into their minds. Like, we don't know how he's doing that yet, but that's how he's able to do it. So on the one hand, I do.
No, so that's really interesting. Like I knew about the the lock on the door, but I hadn't ever noticed the lights like when Will left as soon as he left the Wheeler's house. I have to go back and watch rewatch episode 1 because I've always noticed the lights flickering and stuff. I never realized that they literally followed him all the way home.
It's
but
subtle. Like the one over the garage is very, very clearly safe. Like, because Mike looks at it. The rest of it's a bit more subtle as it follows them. Like, it's very subtle. But it is there, and people have also pointed out. Well, I'm sure you've seen this one, but the fact that you can hear clock noises in some of the earlier, or that somebody pointed out that the Mind Flayer victims, when they're in that abandoned garage or factory or whatever that building is, when Heather and Billy are there, that they're singing, and that they're singing things from the time period that Vecna grew up in.
They're singing We'll Meet Again.
Yeah.
And I kind of noticed that when I watched season 3, like the first time it came out. And I always thought, wow, that's really interesting that they're all singing together.
Yeah, and why that song? Like, why that era? Like, why?
Yeah, and then now, then when they did Dream a Little Dream of Me, and then after the big reveal of Grills and all that, and then that's when it hit me. That was Henry Creel probably making them sing that song. So yeah, that definitely adds to the creepiness of it all, which I still think that was like one of the coolest things ever is to have them sing that song because it's so poetic.
Yeah, and it's creepy, and I saw an interview where when they cast Jamie Campbell Bower, the Duffers kept saying, "Oh, we really love your voice." Like, he did not get what they were going for, and then they got him into the role, and I guess because they originally thought they were going to have to adjust it electronically, and I thought it was. That's what I thought it was, and I didn't until I saw him in an interview and he did the voice. I'm like, oh my god, he can modulate his voice. That's his real voice. Like, I get why they were so excited because oh man, we don't have to edit this. He can just do the voice.
Yeah.
And it's like I've seen people compare it to when Billy possessed is talking to Elle in season 3. If you compare them, they're very close. And it's like, okay, so we know now that was the plan from the beginning because they have that Bible, right, of the everything from the upside down. But you can really see 3 and some a little bit too. But yeah, there's stuff in season 1. I'm like, oh my god! Now that we know, now that you can connect the dots, and that's something I'm really excited about for season 5 is to see them connect those dots. You know what I mean? Because I hope what they're gonna do is we're gonna see some flashbacks and it's gonna chart the thing. The gang's gonna figure it out, the party's gonna figure it all out, and we're gonna see flashbacks to connect it for us, the audience. I'm really excited for that because there's things they still haven't explained. And
yes, one of the things I would really love if they will, and posted this on Twitter a couple days ago about the opening shots of episode 1 of season 5, and the original post was something like, what if it started on, they took us back to November 6, 1983, when Will was taken, and I was like, yeah, and then instead of showing a Will, we go to the flip side and they show us 11, escaping the lab, going through the tunnel, and then we see from that moment till when the very first time we see her when she shows up at Benny's restaurant, because unless they've completely retconned this, it still perplexes me from season 1 how she recognized Will when she saw the picture of him in Mike's room.
I saw that the other day. Yeah.
That's something they've never clarified at all. And so, what you're talking about with the lock on the door, see, I used to think that 11 was somewhere in the vicinity of the buyer's home.
Okay.
And maybe saw him get taken by the Demogorgon.
And tried to help.
Yeah, or saw this house and was curious, and she was trying to hide from Brenner and everyone from the lab, and she opened the lock inside and saw him. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, but if that happened, why didn't she try to help him? but maybe that's because, she had not yet made contact with the other boys and didn't, wasn't,
But I feel like she would have.
yeah, I do too, and that's, but yeah, I hope they explain that or something. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not gonna really be I don't really think it would break the show if they didn't, but for
No, but
me,
it would
I
be
would just love
interesting.
to have that answered,
Yeah, and have you seen this? I've seen a few theories on this. One of them being that like Will was a kid at the lab at some point. Have you seen this theory?
I have.
Yeah.
I have not been
But
able to get over that.
because I didn't see it, but then I saw that like a Twitter thread where somebody was like he always touches his neck at the same way where not cerebral what's it called the
Soteria?
thing the tracker
Yeah.
what's that called?
Soteria, I think
Oh,
that's what he
Superior, yeah,
said.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
I was mixed up with Cerebro, which is which is the radio tower. Let me see names. But he always touches his neck, and so oh my gosh, like I wonder if he was because they said they put it into Henry to control him, right, and to stop him from being able to leave and to track his movement. So if Will was a kid at the lab at some point, maybe Brenner realized no, he was too powerful. And they put it in there, and people are like, "Well, Joyce wouldn't have allowed that." And I'm like, "Yeah, but Lonnie was around back then, and I totally buy that bastard taking him in exchange for money or something."
Mm-hmm.
And since we know that Elle has like repressed memories, and by and large, I think in the real world, like repressed memories are kind of like they're a Hollywood thing, but if you do have repressed trauma that severe, like there are definitely, I definitely buy that there could be cases where you would remember things, but they're buried so deep that you can't deal with them when you're so young. And it coming out when you've gotten a bit older, like that does happen where things come out as you get older. So yeah, I could totally see there being some kind of because yeah, Elle recognizes Will. Nobody has to tell her who Will is. Like she points right.
Yeah.
So
And then Mike says, Will, and then they get interrupted by Lucas like busting through the
yeah,
room. But yeah, and it's one of the things I actually thought that we would probably get addressed this season since Will and
yeah,
Elle are now brother and sister and living together. But
yeah.
it has not come to fruition yet.
No,
And
I feel like they really ran out of time, honestly. I think because there was such a delay. I think if
mhm,
COVID hadn't happened or COVID happened later, I feel like we would have gotten maybe not gotten more, but like they had to pack so much in to set it up for 5, get it out, to finish filming, to do the setup, and they gotta do it before everyone gets like super old. Like they were on such a tight deadline. They were editing like the day before.
yeah,
And if you've seen that thing where I saw an interview where they admitted that like they've edited the special effects. There's things they edited like after, so what you saw when it was released versus now is slightly different. I was
I
like,
did
oh my
not. I
god.
hadn't seen
Okay,
that. Yeah.
I think it's a variety interview with the Duffer Brothers. It's like an hour long or something. I'll have to send it to you. But basically, they get asked about all kinds of things, and so basically they released one version like the day of, and then they were making additional edits to like kind of enhancing some of the special effects. There's little small things that have been added, like nothing major to the plot, but smaller little things have been adjusted. And they said they've done this for previous seasons, so what you would have seen the first time you watched it, like if you saw it live versus what I would have seen last year,
Yeah.
is slightly different. And I was like, well, that explains it because sometimes when I've rewatched season 1 and I rewatched volume 1 of season 4, and there's things I definitely caught on the second watch that I didn't catch the first time, and now I'm wondering, did I miss them because I was so wrapped up in like the action, or were they actually not there?
Yeah.
Or like were they enhanced so you could hear it better or see something better? Like
It's like when in volume 1 when Nancy and all them they get into the upside down. I hadn't noticed this until someone pointed it out on Twitter. But in the background you can hear like this roaring noise, presumably of like a creature or a monster, which I hadn't noticed. The only thing I noticed was like the earthquakes happening. But then when I rewatched it after I saw that online, I was like, oh, I can't believe I didn't notice this before. It's definitely there,
yeah, so bad. I also want to say that I think this variety interview I watched, and I watched it like over several days because it's like an hour. I've seen a lot of comments from the interview taken out of context, where people have said stuff like, "Oh, the Duffer Brothers have said like you can't be killed by bat, no new characters." Like people keep quoting for season 5, and people keep quoting that. But I've seen the actual interview, and I'm like, I feel like this stuff people are taking it like literally. But if you actually watch the interview, they're laughing when they say that stuff. Like they're joking around with the interviewer. The interviewer's asking questions, they're joking around, or like even the Netflix after show like geek stuff, like they're joking around with the interview. So I feel like people are taking that so like I see these quotes on Twitter, they're taking it so literally, and I'm like, yeah, but if you watch the actual interview, they're having a laugh with the interviewer. So some of the stuff could be true, could be totally untrue. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That's the
It's like they're not going to tell you. What would be the point? Like
exactly.
they want to keep this stuff as close to the vest as humanly possible because
Yeah.
they don't want to reveal anything.
Yeah.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, they can give tidbits, but like, I mean, the only thing that kind of went on record was like, yeah, we got to fix Will's birthday because that was just a screw up on their part. Like, I get, like, they wrote something, what, 6 years ago? Like,
Yeah.
They did say in this interview, which I thought was very cool, is that after that happened, somebody, like a fan, made a spreadsheet of everybody's birthday and when they would have had to have been born and sent it to Netflix, and somebody at Netflix passed it on, and they were like, yeah, it wasn't like a fuck you or anything. It was like this very nice, polite, like, hey, like I read that this was an issue, so I've made you this spreadsheet of all these things. And so now they have it. It's like a several page, like spread PDF type situation. And they have it and they use it because, like, yeah, now we have a way of keeping track of this. So bad, send it along. And I'm like, I just like to picture Netflix calling them up or like emailing them, be like, hey, we got this thing. Thought you might want to take a look at it because it does look pretty detailed, could be useful. And I'm being like, oh yeah, this looks extremely useful.
That's like the greatest thing ever. Like the fact that that person's spreadsheet got passed along was that's pretty
Some
good.
intern looked at this and was like, you know what, I know we scrap most of this stuff or we don't actually send it, but like they went to their boss and they're like, I just finished reading this and this actually looks like it could save them a ton of time. So
yeah,
let's pass this one on. Yeah, I love that. Also, the thing that gets me is that people talk about the bats, but when they say the bats can't kill you and they're joking, they're talking specifically about, and people are like, Eddie couldn't have died from the bat. They're talking specifically because the interviewer, because they'd done the Netflix of those billboards, right? To be like, protect Steve at all costs. And so they were specifically, the interviewer was like, should we be worried about Steve and the bat bites? And they're like, nah, bat bites can't kill you. Steve's gonna be fine. Like, they were talking specifically about him. And so context of volume 2, I'm like, oh yeah, bats can kill you. You have too many bat bites, but that wasn't the point of the scene. And people pointed out that like Steve gets attacked, he's totally fine. Eddie gets killed. Other people pointed out that Will lasted for a week in the Upside Down. Hopper was down there for a few hours, and like they're hosing him down. He's throwing up. Like,
yeah.
Certain characters are like la la la, and other ones are like down. They're down for the count.
Well, hopefully it won't be like that next season. Hopefully, I guess maybe because our characters, they've been they're used to the environment by now, so they've like built up an immunity, but nobody else in that town has. So
no, like
they're just like looking up at the ash falling from the sky, going snow as it falls into their mouths. Like, don't be ingesting this crap. Like, what are you doing? Get back inside.
Yeah, and I also think that I think a lot of people accept things from season 1 as canon, but like something I come to realize that a lot of people pointed out is that like I think we have some unreliable narration there because a lot of it's from Brenner's about the lab, about all that, and we now know he's a completely unreliable like perspective, right? Because they said, oh, the atmosphere is toxic, they're putting stuff on them. But how do they know it? Like, how do they know it's toxic? Or what are we defining as toxic? Because then the other characters walk through it and they all like they're coughing, they're like, oh, I don't want to be down here for a long time. Was the Hopper and Joyce are, in full hazmat suits. I think I've realized that I think a lot of things except canon were the percept Brenner and the lab people rather than the actual truth, because the other characters get stuck in these situations and they see the limitations or not of things. And I think there's a difference between like studying something the way that they were trying with no regard for human safety except their own people, and the way the characters are now having to deal with it like themselves, putting themselves on the line. So I think that's a thing too. I think people when they're pointing out, inconsistencies, I'm like, well, is it inconsistency or is the lab people just a completely unreliable narration device from season 1?
Yeah, well, it's like every time they would send, the foot soldiers, if you will, to go into the Upside Down, they would get murdered. Like they were, every time they went back. There. Yeah.
Because Henry would just go.
Exactly. He would sick whatever down there on them.
Whatever on them, yeah.
But not nobody else, so.
Nobody is. And speaking of which, that's the other thing is I'm really hoping they're going to get, they have to get in season 5. But the fact that, so we now know, like, since we now know Vecna was behind the whole thing the whole time, and Will even says, like, it's weird to know it was him this whole time, the fact that, every other person that goes in there into the Upside Down gets killed, right? And we know that either Henry was doing it intentionally, or you know what I mean, or these things were just feeding and taking people out. The fact that that happens to every single person they send in, except Joyce and Hopper go all the way in there, get all the way to the library, resuscitate Will, bring him back, and Vecna allows that to happen, but then takes out everybody else. And there's no indication he feels mercy, right? Elle and him have that entire conversation. So I'm really interested to know why he let that happen, because I mean, you could argue, I mean, they'd taken out the Demogorgon, so like, you know, it's a hide when he was partially injured, but his creatures and things were taken out at other points, and he was still able to continue. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really curious, did he intentionally let them take him back, you know, so he could get stronger? Do you know what I mean? Like, did he already get what he needed from Will? If he does have powers, is it the kind of thing where he's like, oh, I'll let him develop and then take him? Did he already, you know what I mean? Like, I really hope they're going to address that. I feel like they have to, because, you know, like for them to get all the way in and then take him all the way back when, you know, Barb, psh, everyone else just psh, like.
Yeah. And I just thought of something when you said that about when Will, you know, confesses that, you know, now that I know that, you know, Vecna's behind everything, you know, I'll be interested to see next season, you know, kind of Will's journey with knowing that a human is responsible for him being taken and everything that's happened to him. It'll be very interesting to see how he deals with that, because I think the way I saw the scene when he tells Mike this, it really did seem like he was sort of surprised to know that a human was doing all this. I don't know if Will knows he was a former lab test
Yeah, we
subject.
don't know what's.
We don't
Yeah.
know, but yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how Will handles, you know, that side of thing, and Joyce to a degree.
Yeah, and back to your original point when we started talking about how people are like, oh, they want the Mind Flayer to be the big bad, and I agree that like if you have it that model, there's a monsters forever. But I think in a way, like I couldn't have predicted this, but I think now that they've explained that Vecna was behind the whole thing, it makes so much sense that somebody else created the Mind Flayer, because it's this big faceless monster, right? And so for it to just kind of exist in the Nether, we never really questioned it, but now that they've explained it, I'm like, well, yeah, there's got to be something behind this, right? Because this didn't just like poof out of nowhere. The fact that someone's been curating this, you know, now that they've explained that, it's like, yeah, why does it look like Hawk? Like, why are these things coming after them? Like, what is the, you know, rather than just being random, like, this is something I never really questioned. I hope they're going to address this is, okay, why do these things never get beyond Hawkins's border, you know? Like we see the thing in Russia, and then right, but it never gets beyond the border. So there is some kind of does it have to do with, you know, how the mindscape and how Henry's accessing things? Like you know what I mean? Like there has to be more to it. And I've seen the commentary that people are like, you know, I get that if you like season one and like, you know, it's just about this small town and this boy going missing and the supernatural, but it was always bigger than that, because, you know, this stuff just come out of nowhere. And I think it gives a different face, because I think when they thought this was the Mind Flayer, the Demogorgon, the Demodogs, these faceless creatures that are just designed to kill, that the government accidentally created, basically, you know, that's horrible, but it's a faceless evil, you know?
Yeah.
It's very different than a human being specifically targeting you at the age of 12. Like, that's very different, and realizing that that person has a lot in common with Brenner and these lab people. And I'm also interested to see Owen's role next season, because my kind of take on him is I really enjoy him as a character. I think he's very interesting. He walks that line. He's clearly always known more than he's letting on. He's got this grandfatherly persona, but it's clear you don't get that job unless you know more than what's going on. How long was he working with Brenner? Like, you know, that, and I don't think, like, I'm interested to see what he actually knows, because I feel like Brenner, we know he was a charmer. I feel like Brenner charmed him, like, you know, clearly convinced him this was the only way to get Elle's powers back, clearly convinced him. I don't think that Owens knows that he, like, electroshock therapy Elle's mother to the point where she can't function. I don't think he knows that he knowingly, like, created the program and unleashed Henry, what he could do. I don't, like, all the deaths that have occurred, like, I don't, you know what I mean? He blamed Elle for that. Like, I think there's stuff that he doesn't know, because I feel like if he knew, like, out of everyone they've dealt with the lab, I feel like he's the only person I feel like has a soul. Like, he's a doctor first, you know? So I feel like he doesn't know, and I'm interested to see his reaction to that, because I feel like Will and Elle have had that guy's number from the beginning in a way that Owens just can't see. And I'm very interested to see them finally, like, find out what Owens really knows, and for them to get into that, and for him to realize that, like, not only was this guy a mad genius, but he was also just covering up straight up murder for years and years and years, and it goes so much deeper. And he's talking to like 14, 15-year-olds who are like, buddy, this is the situation. And to realize like you've been duped and you're a freaking docked by another guy. And like a 15-year-old has their number.
Yeah.
Is like a lot.
So, what did you think about those behind the scenes pics that they released?
Oh, I love them.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Jasmine and I today. Can't wait to like we get to say this on like a regular basis. Jasmine's gonna be like so awesome. But yeah, so we still have like our final 2 recap episodes for season 4, which unfortunately Jasmine will not be featured on because they were recorded before, long before Jasmine joined us on ham radio. And then of course you'll get to hear this episode probably before that one because I don't want it to be like 2023 and we're just like people are just now hearing like, about Stranger Things Day.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks again everyone for joining us. Jasmine, would you like to send us out?
All right, over and out.
All right, thanks guys. Bye.